Goodness gracious me. What the hell just happened? This episode is amazing. So I'm going to quickly summarize and you just jump in, Rich. Rich has been doing some experimentation and some exploration and learning for just a week. I say just a week. When you hear the episode, it's going to sound like he's been like disappeared for months.
Literally 5 days.
But it's actually 5 days, man.
Yeah.
And he's come back with some very interesting observations indeed. He tried to explain them to me, and I tried to get my head around them, and it was just fascinating, inspiring, exciting, confusing, a little bit weird, but in the end, you know, there's a good rallying cry for us all at the end. I think you're going to enjoy this episode. Rich,
I say no, you can tell by the smile on my face. It's a fascinating topic. I've learned a lot, and it was nice to actually try and talk about agentic AI or AI in general just from my studying. So I really hope you enjoy the episode, and yeah, let us know your thoughts.
Definitely let us know. Okay, on with the show.
Enjoy. All right, hello everybody, and welcome to the Vernon and Richard show. Oh, I nearly said Richards then. Whoa, Richard show.
That would be the correct thing, but yay!
Yeah. It always slips in there. All right. How you doing, sir?
I don't feel well. I am not well. Energy's low, tired. Yeah, shut up. Oh, yeah. See, I see that you've come to your senses and dropped Friendly Tester because everyone has caught up with the reality. There's nowhere left for you to hide.
Spoilers. I told people I was thinking about it. You just happen to know that I am doing it. So depending when this comes out, people may or may not know. But yeah. Yeah. Going to richardbradshaw.com. Gonna go to my own name and talk about all sorts of testing quality, but also, you know, my own journey in the world of software and technology, which is kind of apt given what we're gonna hopefully talk about today.
Indeed. But how are you, Rich? How's your week been?
I'm a little bit like you. I'm a little bit poorly. I don't know what it is. I'm definitely not 100%. But on some of we were talking about goals in the last episode. I've been meeting my calorie in, calorie out goals.
Oh, well done. Excellent.
Meeting my macros.
Nice.
The new lingo that Ben Kelly's making me talk about. So if anyone knows Ben Kelly, he's currently, I don't know, coaching me, holding me accountable on the fitness front. So we've had a few messages. He's been doing what do you call it? He's hanging from a bar to try and build his strength back up.
Oh, okay.
To get back into doing pull-ups, and he sent me some. He's been going well anyway, but he sent me loads of stuff that went over my head earlier today. He was like, "I've realised what's wrong with my blah 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 muscle is too weak. I need to do these kind of exercises." Oh, yeah, that's amazing. That's why you're coaching me, because I have no idea what you just said. Well,
but he's an actual samurai. So
yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I mean? And
if
he
you
was
don't know
he was telling me some time ago, like he was very good, best in the world. He was in that conversation. So I was like, excuse me? That's really good, isn't it?
Yeah. And if you don't know him, if you don't know who Ben Kelly is, but you've watched Game of Thrones, you've seen it.
That's how good his swordsmanship is, because he was good enough to be in Game of Thrones.
He was an extra in many episodes, I believe,
Many series of Game of Thrones. Yeah, many. Yeah.
Cool. But, yes.
So what's the topic for today, Ricardo?
I've had an interesting week, right? So one of my goals I posted on LinkedIn was to find a few more ways to get involved at work. So being at a consultancy, sometimes there's downtime, what as we call the bench, and then sometimes you're well into it. Sometimes bench projects for us bench time can either be personal learning time, or we have internal bench projects. And I was spending last week learning about AI. So there was a boot camp created by the teams in America. It was like 6 weeks. They were all, not all of them, but there was people doing it as like a cohort. But we got sent the materials, and I started digging into that world, looking at how to do prompt engineering really well, how to fine-tune models, kind of understanding vectors, and how all this stuff actually works to a certain level, right? You know, I'm not getting into the math area because I don't have those skills. And then this week I ended up staying in the world of AI. I don't know if I was too enthusiastic about my discoveries the week before, but I've been put onto a project, just an internal project, looking at agentic AI.
Ooh, agentic AI.
Yeah.
So you've been studying AI for a week, so now you're finished, you've completed it, you've unlocked all the achievements.
I've leveled up. I've got a keynote next week talking about agentic AI. No, absolutely not. Anything I say on this episode, if you are an expert and you've got far more significant experience than the 3 days that I've had playing around with this tooling, drop a comment in the chat, correct me, point me to references, resources, the whole shebang, please, because this is my 3-day in observations, so it could be miles off the mark.
The people that I'd be interested to send this episode to, if we can convince them to listen, would be Dr. Tariq King, Melissa Eden, and Martin Hinier. I'd love to know what they think about this. And any other expert, because I am, if Richard has been learning for a week, I've been learning for a morning. That's what it feels like in comparison. So I nonetheless, I am super duper interested in the topic of AI. I recently listened to a video that Martin did about trying to explain agentic AI, or was I reading something? One of the two. So I'm not quite sure what it is. So
I need to watch that. I've not watched that.
Well, that would maybe, I don't know how you want to do this. I'm wondering, how comfortable are you explaining what agentic AI is versus the Gen AI stuff that we've all become familiar with over the last couple of years?
I could definitely explain the subtle differences.
Okay, go on.
Not the subtle, like one of the differences I've noticed, right?
Okay, go for it.
Traditional Gen AI as we have it now is kind of...
I love that.
Traditional,
2 years old in the market.
Yeah, exactly. As we've all come to use it, right? Yeah. You're a human, you go onto a tool, you're an API, you fire off a prompt, you get a response back. You either accept it or you don't, and you move on to the next task, right? So, generate me an image, that's a terrible image, go again. Help me do this problem. You've not helped me reframe my prompt, but you're really you're more having a chat where you're kind of building this context up to try and get a good answer. That's kind of how we've been using it. If you're looking at it more from an API world, from my research last week, you kind of have to give as much of that information as you can because you're not going to have a chat. So if you've integrated AI into your tool, it's not necessarily going to have a chat with an LLM. It's going to send it one request with one prompt and get an answer back, and you're likely going to see that answer.
And right now, you're still describing what we all know and love.
Use the word as tradition, but
you can use it because it's quite amusing. But you can, that's what you're describing. It's either us interacting with these LLMs via some kind of GUI, or it's us interacting via an API. The difference is with the API, it's like a one shot. You don't get to say, oh, well, could you just tweak it a bit? It's just boom, you're done.
Exactly that. Right, if it's built into your product. So if it's not, unless you've built a chatbot, that's different, right?
Right.
But
if you've
built like let's take LinkedIn's AI thing that everyone hates, right?
Wow, it's bad, isn't it? And sorry.
Exactly. But that literally is sending a prompt with your text with some context in it to say, can you make this more friendly or more professional? And it may send 3 or 4 requests, because I'm pretty sure it's not agentic under the hood. So it's probably sending 3 or 4 requests and then giving you 3 or 4 options. And you're just picking one.
So that's the as is. Agentic.
Yeah, when it comes to agentic, and I'll try and explain 2 things because I got massively confused, and maybe this will help other people. So when the solution I've been playing with, initially it looked like it was a bunch of API or prompt calls. So do one call, get response A. The second call takes the response from A and uses it as part of its request. and then back and forth, which is almost, it is using AI agents, as we've now known as they are called. So it is using agents, and you're taking the response from A and passing it on to B. But that's where I got confused, because some of the marketing out there or some of the material calls that agentic AI, but that's literally just using agents. The agentic AI...
Hold on, sorry. In fact, no, you carry on.
The agentic AI that I believe and what I've been reading is slightly different. So when you talk about agentic AI, you still have an agent, but that agent is not necessarily trained, like might be trained in a more serious world, but in the space and the tooling I'm using, which we'll get to later, it basically has a goal. And that agent's goal could be whatever you define, right? So that could be get me the 10 best testers in the world, right? That's its goal. And then in order for that to do that, it has a role, and we will define its role. We'll say you're a researcher, try and give it some context to help it. And we usually give it what we call a backstory. So the agent has a backstory, which if you're used to doing good at prompts, you basically would have done this where you said, as a wannabe YouTuber,
incredible YouTube
podcast host. Exactly. Yeah. So that's kind of what your agent is, and it has a goal. And then you give the agent tasks. And then basically the agent might do one-to-many tasks, but it's going to keep calling these LLMs, or it's going to keep iterating and trying to do different things until it believes it's met
achieved the goal.
And you give it the next bit that kind of is interesting is you give it a bunch of tools. So you give it access to one-to-many tools that it can use. You're not telling it to use them. You're saying, here's some tools.
Here's some stuff
that you can use. And
that
then
might help. Okay.
Exactly. And then the AI understands what you've asked, and it tries to look at its tools, and it will start using them. So for example, if I say, go and get me the 10 best testing blogs, it might, if I've given it access to a Google search tool, it might
come back with
searching.
10 of yours and one of mine.
Well, yeah, but it will. If you look at the way it works, or at least the tool I'm using, a tool called Crew AI, you will see it will do like quality assurance blogs search, testing search, top testing blog search, and it's gathering all this information. And then you could have different tools that know how to open a link, like an actual link. You can have tools that scrape websites. You could have, there's a whole bunch of different tooling out there, and obviously you can build your own. But essentially, it will keep going and keep trying stuff until it feels like it's satisfied its goal.
Okay,
and
I got questions.
Then it will stop. Yeah, I've got those too.
I got questions. I got clarifying questions based on what you just said. The first scenario you described was an API making request A, getting a response, and then using that in request B.
Yep.
I just wanted to make sure, are you saying that interaction is being described as agentic, but isn't?
That's what some people are describing it as, yeah. So a lot of people are confusing having multiple agents out there deployed and using them as agentic.
Hold on. So this was another question.
Yeah.
So with the terminology that we use at the moment is we've got things like GenAI, LLMs, but you keep saying agent and then agentic.
Exactly. Yes. So they're all different.
Are these the same?
No. So
okay.
GenAI is obviously just a flavor of AI, right? It's generative, as we know. Generative AI, it can make stuff, right?
Yes.
It can make images, words, whatever. The agent is a thing that you can deploy anywhere that is basically configured and trained and all set up with all the background story, everything it needs to be able to do something really well. And you might have an agent that goes to ChatGPT. You might have an agent that goes to Llama. You might have an agent that goes to Claude. And then your app can deterministically use them because you've coded it to go and use them.
Trained it.
You've literally written code that says call agent 1 with this prompt and get a response, because you don't have to give it all the background and everything else because the agent already knows all its background. So that's more using it as, it's almost like using it as a microservice. It's not doing any thinking. It's not doing any intelligence. It's not doing any, what's the word I want? It's not doing any agency. It's just going to make your call and give you back the response.
That's what an agent does.
Yes.
And it may, when you say
Well,
agent,
sorry, no, that's what an agent could do. That's how some people are using them. An agent can also be agentic.
Right. Okay. One more quick question, and I want to ask more questions. So if this is all right with you,
Yes, it's fun.
Does a chatbot fall under the description of an agent then?
Only if you've configured that chatbot to have background information kind of coded into it. Okay. Whereas if you go to ChatGPT, right, it doesn't know anything about you. It's only what's in that first prompt you send it. So in that instance, it knows nothing. So the way I don't know how ChatGPT is deployed. It could be using agents as in routing your traffic and stuff. But in my understanding, I'm going to keep saying that because I am not by any way means an expert. The difference becomes, and I did mean to write down some specific words around what made it different, but it's the
excellent preparation, Rich.
Yeah, the agentic nature is the fact that it can make decisions and it will continue to do things until it's kind of achieved its goal.
That's the part that I find interesting, and that is something that I've definitely heard Martin
when
you said that, I was like, yes, I've heard that before. The goal thing sounds fascinating.
It has it has agency. It has its own ability to make do what it wants to do.
Yeah.
It's weird. And when you see it in action, I've only seen it in action the last 2 days, and you see its thought process, because that's another thing. It gets the output of the tool. I was
going to ask you about that. Yeah, it sounds like you're able to peek under the covers a bit as it's trying to achieve the goal. That sounds very cool.
Yeah, so we're using a tool called Crew AI, and internally someone's built a lot of stuff around it that I don't know a lot about yet, and it's an ongoing project. But in the logs, I can see it's got its goal, and I can see the first thing it tries to do. Yeah, it gets the response, and then the next thing you see is its thought, and it will say something like, "I think searching for ABC might return better results," and then it will go off and try that, and then it will get the answer, the actual response that it got from whichever LLM it was calling, or whatever tool it was using, and then you get the result, and then you see it decides if it thinks it's met its goal, and it will say no, and then it will carry on. And the fun thing is, so I spoke to Jason Arbon, and I was asking him I'm losing my mind, Jason. I can't understand the difference. And he was like, you should expect to see either really good answer, as in a great answer, absolute utter nonsense, absolute just nonsense, right?
Just wrong on every possible level. Okay.
Yeah, or you should see the agent go, I can't do it. I'm sorry, I tried. And I was like, that sounds weird. But then today I did see that. I saw the agent say, I am unable to do this task. And I was like, that's mad. But then I looked at what it'd done, and because of what it had chosen to do, I was like, oh, of course you can't do it. Why would you even try doing it that way?
So did you give it the goal?
We gave it the goal, and we gave it the task, and we gave it access to certain tools.
So is goal and task? Sorry, I'm just picking up on the terminology here. Are these very deliberate terms, or is it just colloquial what you're saying?
Though this is related to QAI, the tool that I'm using. So the
QAI,
Crew, as in
Crew AI. All right, okay,
me and my crew. That's how.
Okay.
That's how me and my colleague were talking about it today. It's like no longer Richard now; it's Richard and my 20 agents. Which is, jokes aside, though, that
is the point, isn't it?
That is the point. That literally is the point. You take a little bit of your knowledge, train it onto one of these agents, and keep training it, and it will eventually, become quite good at it. Whereas you'll notice with ChatGPT, it might take a few conversations for it to get good at what you're trying to do, and then you learn from that and you tweak your prompt. These agents are doing that themselves. They're learning, they're storing their history, they're putting it all in local DBs, and they can use that history next time to be able to complete the task, which is crazy.
So, thank you for that. You're helping me stumble around in the dark here. So what is making that interesting for you? Like, what's the big difference? It's like, okay, that sounds super cool, Rich, but so what?
Well, I think the interesting thing for me, and the thing that's got me excited about, is I've seen lots of people talking about agents, and I'd never really connected the dot to this agentic world, right?
Okay.
And I'd never understood, and even now I don't, but I've realized I don't need to. So when I spoke to Jason, I was like, Jason, how does it work? Like, you give it a goal.
The agentic AI.
Yeah,
like,
how does it work? How does it
doing
decide what to do first? How does it know what tool to pick? Blah, blah, blah. And it was like, you know, he gave me like some words, and I was like, actually, does it matter? Like, you know, I don't know how ChatGPT works. You know, I know under the hood, words have been turned into vectors, and I know that it vector matches it uses math to try and find, you know, 1 to 6 words that might, might be the next word, and then it moves on until it thinks it's generated something close to what you want.
Okay.
But with this, I was like, how is it taking the goal and the goal and the task and working it out? And it's fascinating because I've realized loads of connections to testing, which I hope we hit on, or maybe I'll remember
that's what I wanted to get to now, because before the podcast rolled and we were chatting about this topic, you were saying that it had sparked a few thoughts and ideas and perspectives, and it sounds like you harassed the shit out of Jason today.
I didn't know. So Jason was very kind and literally jumped on a LinkedIn call with me with like 10 minutes notice, and he had 15 minutes in his day, and he gave it to me. So thank you, Jason, for that. Some of the other ones are on my work laptop, but so if I think of an agent,
what were your thoughts, man? I want to get into that.
Well, I'm realizing that, and again, caveat, I don't know if I'm right. I don't know, and I'm not claiming to be right.
We get it. We get it.
I'm realizing that
bumbling around.
So, for example, in testing, right, we talk a lot about specialisms, right? We've been talking a lot about generalists and specialists, right? ChatGPT is a generalist.
Big time.
But then when you get this agent, because you can give it backstory and you can give it certain goals, and then you give it certain tools.
Yep.
You're almost like I said, it's like you're training. I don't want to say a tester, but that's the world I'm in, right? You're almost training a tester. Yeah. So, and you're, like you said, you're making it so that this person who has you now have knowledge of this tool, you have knowledge of using that tool in the past. You're going to keep building knowledge of using that tool, and here's a goal that I want you to achieve by using that tool. So the thing that it got me is, and I was trying to I've been trying to do this today. So when you think of a backstory, a lot of people in the testing space have often spoke about personas, right? We talk about personas. We talk about doing persona-based testing.
Yeah, man.
A backstory is a persona.
Okay.
We have the skills of writing personas. So a really good backstory is a well-written persona. That's what that is. You're giving it... Yeah, Crew AI calls it personality, but it's the same thing. You're giving it a personality. You're giving it content.
I can see where you're going with that.
I feel like I can do that already. That's not like... If someone came along to me and said, write a persona, I'm not going to be like, what the hell's a persona? I've never heard of that word.
Yeah, I'm done. Let me know and ask ChatGPT what's going on.
So I'm into that space. And then the backstory, we often talk about context in testing, right? We talk about that a lot.
It has come up once or twice.
And when I'm trying to design test cases in the past, or test ideas, I'm having to put things into context. I'm having to understand the context. I'm having to put the task at hand into that context to try and work out if I'm doing something sensible or not. So giving an agent a backstory is saying, this is the current context. These are the things you need to know. Now, if we talk about testability, that's the skill of working out what impacts our ability to test. Here, I'm thinking about what pieces of information would help this agent solve what it's trying to do. So therefore, again, I'm using the same set of skills to map out the context, but more importantly, which pieces about that context are more important than others, and let the agent know about them.
You're trying to feed that into the context and backstory. Is that what you're saying?
Into the back, yeah. So therefore, the agent knows more about who it's meant to be, the space that it's operating in.
Okay.
And that's the unique difference here when we talk about, when I mentioned like ChatGPT just being a generalist. Here, we're able to give a lot more to that agent. And then the other connection that I got was tools. And this like, again, like, might sound too excited, but like the when if I think about one of the trainings if the automation and testing course, me and my former colleague Mark, we always spoke about being tool aware. Yeah, so we always spoke about being tool aware, and we always said in one of my YouTube channels, which I will do, is about being tool aware. Not that you need to use the tool, but you need to be aware it exists because it might help you solve one of your testing problems one day. That's the same with the agents. I'm giving them knowledge of tools. I'm making the agent tool aware, but I'm not saying you need to use it. So I'm telling it there's tools that exist. The tools have descriptions. They have, they have words around them, which the agent can use to understand what that tool can do. But I'm saying here's some tools. And the thing that blew my mind, like when I think about testers, is like, well, I've watched testers struggle to do a task because they're not aware of the tool. They don't know the tool. It's the same thing here. Or you give someone the wrong tool, it's going to be significantly harder for them to solve the problem. And it's now the same here with these agents. If you give them bad tooling, they're going to struggle. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to get confused. But if you give them the right tools to do the job, then there's more chance of them succeeding. So it's almost like I said, we'll talk about tasks in a second, but think about your team at work and a certain task comes up. You pick someone to do it based on their knowledge, their history, their experiences, their context, and their skills. This is no different.
Best placed to tackle this particular problem?
And that's what you do
make
here.
Your choice and
exactly
send them off.
It's the same here, and then we'll jump to task, but very quickly because you just said it there. When you have a task in this context, in this world of agentic, you can specify 1 to n agents to do it, and it will the actual lead agent will decide who to send that to.
Okay, I gotta jump in because it's really bugging me. Right, you keep saying the word task, and it's bugging me.
Sorry.
What is it? And you're using it in a way that makes me think it's different to goal.
It is,
but then sometimes use it in a way that makes you feel like it's the same as goal. So what is it? Is it the same or is it different?
So, and again, I won't caveat myself again because you keep shouting at me. But right,
yeah, we know. We're just exploring here, man.
So, the goal, the agent has a goal, but that goal might be made up of one-to-many tasks. So again,
Beautiful.
it's like task analysis. That's so my connection to testing again is I often talk about task analysis.
Got it. Beautiful. So you're saying for this goal, what do I think the tasks are that I need to do in a particular order in order to achieve this goal? Thank you very much, Richard.
And that's interesting though, because with an LLM or with AI, you theoretically could just write it as one big task.
Yeah.
But what I've learned in the last few days is that makes it incredibly hard to debug, and it makes it more likely for the system to go a bit crazy.
Sounds familiar. Flaky agents, Rich. Is that what we're about to unleash?
Yeah, the task is too big. So the first thing I've learned from this is looking at it from a system architecture point of view, and instead of thinking
architecture,
using my existing knowledge of system architecting.
Okay.
And looking at it and saying, this is the task, but how would I break down that task into suitable chunks where a certain agent might be really good at that bit and another agent's going to be better at this bit, and then designing that accordingly to get hopefully not deterministic, but more deterministic answers.
So what my see, I'm about to correct myself. What little understanding I've got around this is, one of the things that's getting the world at large excited and interested about this, is that you'll have a micro agentic architecture.
Yeah.
Is that you'll have all these agents that can do very specific things, and you just give the goal to a bunch of these things, and they go off and collaborate and figure out the solution.
Yeah.
But how specific? No, I've worded it wrongly. When you're giving the backstory,
yep,
and it sounds like the task analysis or the context you're explaining is going to be part of that backstory. How much agency does the agent? Oh God, terminology. How much agency does the agent have to take that context into account and to take your explanation of things as this is a great explanation? Richard did not have any gaps in what he told me, so I'm just going to go off and just take what he said as being true. Or does it is it suspicious, and does it kind of ignore stuff? And does that? Do you know what I'm getting at?
Yeah. If I tell you, again, I've only looked at a few of the attributes that specific to Crew AI, and this might help what you're thinking. So the first thing you give a task is a description, and the advice here is that's meant to be as clear as concise statement of what the task entails.
Okay.
So as I mentioned earlier about blogs, the first task might be go and get 10 working URLs for blogs on AI.
Okay.
That's the first task. But really what I'm wanting to do is I actually want to know what the running theme is between all those 10 blogs. But the first task is just to get them. Then I might train another agent to be able to pull out the useful information and structure it in a JSON object.
This is very interesting. Okay.
And then the third agent's job might be to take that JSON output, because you can pass results from one agent to the other. They call it context, but it's almost like the running history of the task. You can pass that to the next agent, and then that agent would have the task then of creating 10 bullet points that summarizes all 10 of those articles. So you could theoretically give that to just one task. Go find 10 blogs, summarize them, create bullet points.
Right.
But with the agent approach, you can then tailor them and train them and give them more background and context to make them better at doing that. If you give that just to one agent, because of its agency in its own mind, not mind, but because of its agency in its own, what's the word I want, like thinking process, it could go off and do that in any completely different, crazy order it wanted to.
You reminded me of something that I thought about when I first started hearing about this. And it was, rightly or wrongly, I couldn't help but think about humans. These little agents, I guess I was doing what you were doing. I was thinking, what does this look like when it's humans doing the thing? And there was all this argument around, it's better if you have a team full of generalists. That seems to be the common thinking. It's like you need a team of generalists is better. I'm doing air quotes for people listening. But in this world, we're saying what we want is a team of specialists.
See, this is interesting though.
And it's like, well, what? I wonder why that is. And I didn't, it was just a thought. I don't have any answers. I was just playing around with it in my head, saying, when it's humans, we want generalists. When it's machines, we want specialists. But why? Because we're trying to get one to act like the other.
But there's a subtle difference that I've caught on to today, and I feel like the way I worded it to someone at work today was, you have to take the assumption that every agent is dumb, and I mean super dumb. Like if you take a word that has a dual meaning, it doesn't know what you mean. It's going to guess based on using the LLMs, right? But it doesn't know anything. So they are all really dumb. Whereas if you take your team of generalists, most of them probably have a shared context of the project, the product, the business,
But didn't you say that
Yeah.
that build you can pass these around each other? Excuse me. The agents can pass them these contexts from
They
one
don't
to
pass
the other.
they pass the results of the task
Ah,
in each
okay,
other. So they
okay.
don't share their
So
kind of story and other
so
things.
agent A and agent B have two different contexts, and when agent A gets the result, it doesn't give the result and its context to agent B. It just says, "Here's the result." And then agent B, with its
Yeah.
own independent context, then goes off and does whatever it's
Yeah,
doing.
the confusing thing is, again, Crew AI calls that context. So the results is what they call context.
I've just Googled Crew AI, and I think you should give us a shout out, Crew AI, because god damn, we have hooked you up in here, people. We have sent people scurrying to your website.
Back
Anyway,
to try and help you with the task, there's an interesting field in the way they structure their use of it. Is you have what's called an expected outcome or expected output.
Oh, Rich. Okay.
Which is
interesting.
Bringing up the skills of writing really good assertions or writing
this is all
really
sounding
good things.
familiar.
Yeah, so the expected output is how an agent knows that task is done.
It's done. Yeah.
So not the whole thing, and not the whole goal, as we mentioned earlier, of kind of its decision. So the goal, yeah, this is a really good thing that I've just remembered. So
Okay.
the goal is predominantly used to help the agent make decisions, mostly around what it does next. So
am I going towards my goal, or am I going away from my goal?
Exactly that.
Right,
so, we know my goal is to lose weight, right? And I could do that by dieting, exercising more, where I might go, you know what, today I don't care today. I'm going to eat over today, and tomorrow I'll do more. But I still know my goal is, I'm doing that.
The goal hasn't changed. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing that because I'm going to take certain actions. So that's kind of the goal. But with a task has an expected outcome. And the advice here from Crew AI is to be as descriptive as possible to help the agent know if that task is done.
As descriptive as possible to help. Okay.
It says a detailed description of what the task completion looks like. And I found this, the thing I'm working on, it was like, we are not being descriptive enough, because we were seeing the agent get to complete it really quickly, because we just said, summarize the top 10 testing blogs, right? And it could have got absolute garbage. It could have got the worst 10 blogs ever and summarized them by saying, testing's rubbish, right? But it's met its goal. Well, it's met the expected outcome, and in theory, it met its goal because I gave it a weak goal, which was to summarize 10 testing blogs. It's done that, but that's not what I actually wanted, right? I wanted good blogs. I wanted to know what's happening in the future. I wanted to know what the best skills were, but I didn't hide any of that information. Also, I never told it what a good blog looked like. So what is a good blog post?
How do you know you're reading a good blog post?
So this brought two testing concepts into my mind of how this is working. So number one, expected output, that's an assertion, right?
Man,
we've got lots of skills writing assertions. However, this is where it gets really fascinating for me. We're used to writing expected outcomes or outputs in a deterministic manner.
Correct.
The web page should say, this is an error. The answer should be 14. Right. Whereas now, and I'll shout out Miles at work, a chap called Miles.
Miles?
Now, this is where we're bridging the world of testing and quality. Because now, instead of expressing an expected outcome, we have to define the quality characteristics that make it good. Because we don't know the answer. So we have to say, so for example, an error message, I could say it says there has been an error. But now I'm going to have to train it to what a good error message. Well, not train it, but write the words of what an
You have to articulate what makes it good and what therefore makes it not good.
Exactly, to give it help in helping it determine whether it thinks this is a good. Yes, and that, like, we are good at this. This is what we do. Like, we have been doing this. Like, apart from doing it in a deterministic way, the people who are branched out into quality engineering and whole company quality, we've started dabbling in what is a quality characteristic. what is a quality aspect?
Yeah.
How do we measure quality? How do we know that is actually a good website?
Yeah.
And we've started formulating words and languages around this,
Mm-hmm.
and we've all practiced it. And that is what we have to do here. We can't say your answer should be good, right? We can't say they should be good blog posts because it makes no sense to the agent. It doesn't understand it.
I think, Rich, you know as well as I that we will say that.
Yeah.
And we will blame the tool.
But again, another fascinating step.
Because humans.
Absolutely. But if you're not specific, you're then relying on the training of the underlying LLM that you're using.
Correct. Yes.
Which then brings in all the biases that people have spoke about.
Because it still is using generative AI in the mix. So if your context I keep saying context first. If your backstory and your what did you call it? Expected output?
Yeah,
outcome?
So the expected output is on the task itself, yeah.
Yeah, if that is in any way lacking, it will fall back to what it's learned from the LLM or access to the LLM or whatever, I don't know.
It's like, if I think about it from trying to think of a good testing example, it's like the goal is to fully test this product. The tasks are write a strategy, create test cases, automate scripts, do results, log bugs, retest bugs.
The conversation that I have in my head is that conversation that many listeners have been involved in, which is, you're in some kind of war room, go, no go conversation, and somebody will turn to the testers and say, is this thing good enough to release? Like, can we ship this thing?
Yeah.
I know that might be less of a conversation for a lot of us now, but I've been in those conversations. And how, depending on how we answer, has a big impact on what happens next.
Yeah.
And that's what your description makes me think of. It's kind of like, the agent is saying, yep, I'm done. But depending on how it's interpreted, what done is supposed to look like, and that's based on what you told it in the backstory and the expected outcomes and the tasks and all this, that may or may not be a good answer.
And that's also based on what it's been able to learn, right? So
in my
space, I'm going to, we're going into Google and we're gathering, we have no control over that, right? Whereas in our
learning drawing, isn't it?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Forgot about that part.
In our systems we might work on, we might have a bit more control, as in we could say, go and get the latest financial figures, and we know what data's coming back. Not the numbers, but we know that the right data structures are there.
Right. Okay.
As we have more control, right, of parts of our system. Whereas my learning example is a bit hard because I'm literally saying, go, just use the main tool you have is Google, go search, which is quite broad. I
don't know I know you've been experimenting with this technology and this specific tool for like a week or so.
But like 3 days.
Oh, is it less than a week? Okay. So I was going to ask you, because we're still in the realm of GenAI, would we expect the same result from these agents if we just don't change anything, but we just repeat it? We'll say, okay, do it again. Okay, do it again. Okay, do it again. And all of and everything I've just said there just fits into everything that we just talked about, which is very loaded and it's very vague. Yeah. What do you mean by the same? Like, same how? Like, same speed? We get the results back at the same speed? We reach the same conclusion? We get the same summary of the same 10 blog posts? Like, what does it mean? But
I think again, nothing we've mentioned yet, but garbage in, garbage out, right? So if the data it's being given access to via the tools that we've built for it. So again, in the workplace, you might build tools that are capable of doing a few things, as in tool A might be go and get the number of accounts we've got. Tool B might be trained to go and get the number of people who've unsubscribed in the last week. Or it might be more a tool that says, here's all our member data. and then you're trusting the AI is going to go find a column that says unsubscribed on this date, or you can really help it. So again, I think it's how broad you make your tasks, how complex the space is, how many sources of data, which is why I went back earlier when, for me, the value I've added on this project just in a few days is gone. I don't think the order of these tasks makes sense. I think that task is too big. That should be smaller, because then I can define I can define a better expected outcome to make it help. And also the other side I would say is you might get the same answer, but it might do it in a completely different order. It might do it in might take it 4 minutes instead of 2 minutes. That's because you don't know how it's going to interpret the words, and also the underlying model
actions it's going to take.
The underlying model could get updated. So again, this is where we start to move into version controls of LLMs. What LLM are you using? Is it your own deployed instance that you can control the version, or are you just using ChatGPT that's getting updated every day? Which obviously then is in turn going to alter your system's behavior.
Your behavior of what your agents do.
Which is funny because that's the same as packages, right? It's, do I just accept the latest NPM package, or do I, and it might break my build, or do I say, no, I only want to use version 1.1? There's so many similarities.
So the risks and challenges and opportunities in some dimension look the same as what software development challenges and risks and opportunities we've had.
Absolutely.
Over the previous however many decades it's been. But there are going to be some differences based on the nature of the underlying technology of GenAI and LLMs, machine learning, all of that good stuff.
And there's also a fun thing that I'm just remembered when I was looking at the list. There's one more fun thing that we did today, which is max iterations. So you can basically say, if you've tried 10 times, just give me your best answer. And like, again, I've been doing that, and we've done that with people. We've literally done that
10 times. Give me your best answer.
Well, if you think of someone trying to solve a problem.
I get it.
It's like, and people have thought about that with these agents. So you can literally code in an iteration number and say, after 10 attempts, just give me your best answer.
So retry attempts, like timing out.
Yeah, it's not really, in a way, it's retrying, but it's more how many goes are you going to have at learning before you basically give me your answer.
The thing that I'm interested in. Oh, sorry, go on. Sorry.
No, go on.
Getting accurate about the words that we're using and what they mean feels of paramount importance right now. Because, you said retries, you talk about it's when you started talking about tasks is when I had this first thought, and it just reminded me about it when you talked about, if you've tried 10 times, give me your best answer. So when you were talking about tasks, I was saying, it reminded me about this conversation that has happened a lot in testing of, what is a test case? Like, how big is it?
Yeah.
Is it this big or is it this big? And are we comparing the same? Is it 10 of these and 10 of these are the same? Because when you talked about, we could make a massive backstory or a massive task list, or I can't remember the terminology exactly, and give it to a single agent, or we can break it down. It feels like there's going to be a judgment to be made about how we break those up.
Absolutely.
And if I kind of infer what you were saying, you're gonna turn and say, once again, welcome testers, that's where you live today, and you can help massively with that. And then the same thing happened when I had the similar thought rather, when you talked about, if you tried 10 times, give me your best answer. I was like, what does it mean to try? How does it know? What's a try? How's it counting tries? Is it, that was one thing. And then give me your best answer again is like, how does it make that judgment? And maybe that's the kind of question that you ran past Jason because it sounded like you said you had a couple of questions for Jason, or you had some ideas, but then you thought to yourself, well, do I need to know how this is?
Well, you've hinted at another realization that I've not mentioned, which is exploratory testing.
Here we go. Come on.
If you look at the logs and when I was looking at today, you see
yeah.
It basically starts with an initial thought. I think Googling for this string will help. So he goes, okay, I can do that because I have tool Google search. Therefore, I'm going to try. And it goes off and tries. It gets the results. It analyzes it. And it has another thought. It goes, but obviously in between that, I'm guessing it's been coded to go, have I met my expected output yet? No, I haven't. Okay, what's my next thought that I can do to help me? And it does its next thought, and it gets it back, and it learns exactly the same as we do in exploratory testing. Try something, learn from it, try again, learn something, do something else, until we feel that have we got good enough information yet to not have to do any more exploratory testing? Or do we feel comfortable? Do we have confidence? Whatever the languages you want to use, we're now back into what you just said. How can I define a really good explanation of when it should stop?
What does it mean to have confidence?
Yeah, what does it
and
mean?
We're back
what does
into
good enough look like?
Agentic. You've got the concept of the tester's story. Now I've got the concept of what does that look like from an agentic perspective?
Yeah.
What's the agentic story?
That's loops. It's basically how many thought cycles.
Agent?
Yeah. And it will tell you. So again, you can go back through the chain of thought, as they call it. You can go through the chain of thought and you can see how it went about trying to solve.
But if you think about the tester story, 3 levels. The state of the product, what I did to understand what the state of the product was, and then how good were those actions that I took to understand the state of the product. So if you flip that into agentic world, can you answer those kind of testing story questions by looking at the logs and the insights and the information that it's? Could you answer those kind of questions? So could you say to it, okay, you think the task is either, what were the options? It's either done or you failed, or there was something else.
It'll basically say you couldn't do it.
Here's what you did to arrive at that conclusion, and here's what you didn't do, which is another part of the tester story. Here are the things that you decided. I decided not to do this because reasons. That's another part of step 2. And then step 3 is, and here's why I think the things I did at step 2 were any good or not. Here are the things that made my actions at step 2 more difficult or easier, and why you should trust or mistrust what I did.
I think there's 2. This is again me 3 days in knowledge. I think there's 2 ways. 2 ways that can be done from my brief understanding. Is one is you manually we look at
holy shit. Wow.
We look at what it did and we tweak the prompts to make it not go into that, hopefully not go back into that rabbit hole itself. But also, secondly, if it fails, it has its own memory of what it did to fail.
Okay.
So therefore, you would not hope, but there's a config you can have that says use your memory. So it would look at its memory and probably go, that didn't work for me in the past. I'm not going to try that. I will try something slightly different.
This is crazy.
Which is where that agency side of it comes in. So, like, it has all this, like I said, it has all its previous execution information. It has its results. It has the number of attempts. It knows that it took 4 attempts to get to the goal that time. But again, it only knows it's only as good as what you tell it good looks like, and that's the real challenge here. It's to clearly define the task and tell it what good looks like, and then map that to the overall agent's goal, which is to whatever it is, right? Solve a certain problem.
With the experiments you've ran and the tasks and the goals and the tasks you were giving it. Do you know how when you're running your applications on your test code, you can set breakpoints, you can step through things. Is that a thing based on what you've seen so far?
No.
It's not a thing.
No, because it's got full autonomy, right? So it's just gonna go off and do stuff. So we've got we've built some observability into it, which I've not had chance to play with yet.
Yeah.
So I can see what it's doing, but I can't be like, hey, you should stop here, because I can't. There's no logic for me to say stop on, because I don't know.
Stop
There's
button
there's
or
no
pause
code.
button.
There's no deterministic flow, right? There's no order to it, if that makes sense. It
does.
I don't know its plan. I only know its current action and what it's done in the past.
No. Yeah. So I don't know if you've done this. I'm going to be honest. I've only really played with ChatGPT via the GUI, right? But nonetheless, when I'm asking it to do something, and it kind of writes out the output, right?
Yeah.
And there's times when I look at it, I'm like, stop, this is nonsense. This is off. You've gone off the reservation. This is no good. And I'll just interrupt it. I'm talking about that. Can you give it a goal and it's off the reservation? You said one of the answers, one of the outcomes will be, or Jason was saying, one of the outcomes will be, this is trash.
No, you can't.
It just has to. That's weird. Okay, interesting.
If it believes it's met the expected outcome, it will return that back to the agent that called it, and then that agent will use it. So what you can do is you can code in steps where we've not got onto this topic, because I only spent. I don't really know enough to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm asking you questions like you're an expert.
You can run, you can do evaluations at certain steps of the process. So even though that agent says it's done its job, you could code into the task an evaluation that says, okay, so the summary has come out like this.
Yeah.
Is that actually a good summary?
Yeah.
Ideally, you would try and I'm guessing you would try and make your agent or the task, do some of that at the start. But if you're merging a couple of results together, you then could have this eval section where you say, right, because again, this is what I mean about you can be more specific. So if the smaller you break the tasks up, the more verbose you can be with the information. Because another thing we've not mentioned is you very quickly run out of token space, because as it builds up,
it will just use as many as it can.
So some of the stuff we've seen is you end up with half a response because you've hit the token limit, because you've sent so much information. Again, I don't really fully understand that space yet.
Me neither, but I know that it's like there's a finite number that you can have at any one time,
and if you run out, exactly that, and because we're not fully seeing the whole prompt that ends up being sent to the LLM, because in our instance, Crew AI is hiding that, so we don't know how much it's sending, because you've said you've not looked at the API for ChatGPT, for example.
No,
I did that last week, and I found that there's two system prompts, which is basically the context setting and the educating bit that you can do in the API.
That's something else I wanted to ask you about. Oh my God, so many questions.
So what you see in ChatGPT, you're having to write a lot more because you're not able to specify the system.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you. Is that me using ChatGPT and the way I use it, the way I understood it based on some of the training that we saw that I went to with the Dr. Tariq at this place, he talks about, so there's this pattern that I've seen people talk about when it comes to prompt engineering, where you say, as a blah, I want to do. And I've seen other people, and Tariq talked about this, he kind of said, you kind of don't need to do that necessarily, because ChatGPT will do that under the hood.
If you're using the API, right?
I don't know, but based on what he said then, on what you're saying now, what I wanted to ask you was, I know you said agents using this agentic approach, you're able to set the backstory and the context and etc. etc.
Yeah.
Does ChatGPT fill that in under the covers as you're interacting with it?
Yeah, so I'm just looking
kind
at,
of invisibly. Are you looking at the thing right now?
I'm looking at the API docs now, and yeah, like when you use the
there's
API,
always a context. It's just you may or may not specify it
there's a role
directly.
and a context that are already in there that
Right.
you kind of, I imagine they're probably blank in the actual real ChatGPT, but when you use the API, as Tarek said,
It's a field that
you can
needs to
put it
be.
all in there. And as I mentioned at the start of the pod, that's why when you're using it as like when you're using it to just, I want one result, you have to provide as much as possible because you're not having that conversation.
Yeah, you don't get to refine stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas you as a human, you're having that conversation, and the agents are almost the same. They're having a conversation.
They're having that interaction
between
back
themselves,
and forth.
and they're having their own internal monologue to help them get to a point. But when you use the ChatGPT as a single, make an API call, get a response, you have to give as much as possible to make sure the response is good enough.
Goodness gracious.
Which is one thing to finally end on, is that really important aspect of all this tooling is the human in the loop. So this agentic stuff I'm looking at is still really new, right? And it can go wrong so easily, and it can go from brilliance to nonsense really quickly. So you need to, again, thinking of good use cases for it. Like you needs to, at the moment for me, it needs to be use cases where it's making a decision, but maybe that's ending up in front of a human to make that final decision. Like, it's not saying, no, you can't have a mortgage. It's building something out that presents it to me in an easy to digest manner with its opinions of the results that allows me to say yes or no. Whereas if you think of a traditional system, we've already hard-coded those rules to say yes or no. Here, it's slightly different. We're looking for reasoning, we're looking for factors, we're looking for summaries. And we might need to go off to 20 different places to get all that data. That's where this agentic approach would be really good. But again, you still need to build the custom tools to allow it to do that. You still need to design really good tasks.
Yeah.
So there's loads of interesting use cases I can think of.
That's putting it mildly.
But I still think that human in the loop aspect of it, I from what I've 3 days of education and tinkering, I like, without doing a lot of testing and a lot of tweaking on the prompts and a really fine tuning it, even potentially having your own model, your own LLM models.
Yeah.
It's a long way yet.
But this is perfect though, because you've had a dabble.
Yeah.
You've played around with a particular tool, and you're coming back with, hey everyone, this is what I figured out. So I know, personally, this has been one of those episodes that I enjoy when I lose track of the time. I've got literally, and I can't see on the UI, I don't know how long we've been talking for.
It's been an hour.
Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you'd hope to talk about that you want to try and squeeze in, or do you want to leave it for another episode?
No, I'll just summarize, and I would say, like, it's blown my mind, but I can see really good similarities. Like, I'm just going to find the exact wording that I said to Jason, because he said,
perfect.
He replied to me and said, I love how you've articulated the connection.
Okay.
So I put designing small targeted automated tests with very good assertions, right? That's a skill we currently debate in our industry. Who can do that really well? Are people actually doing it really well? That felt almost identical to me as I was doing this task of designing small, clear, targeted tasks with very clear expected outputs. Those two things felt very similar to me, and I felt very comfortable doing it. It didn't feel alien to me to be doing that. And then the same with the tools, I mentioned it. So, testers will be more effective if you give them the right tooling, right? You can do certain types of testing and tasks if you're given the right tooling. It's the same with these agents.
The art of the possible.
Exactly that. The agent will be limited, and it will make decisions and think about how to solve the problem based on the tooling you give it. Give it only one tool, it's the only thing it can use. It's going to use it. So it's the only option it has. Give it multiple tools, it might decide which one's right for the job.
For now.
Yeah, for now.
Until it starts to learn.
Yeah. But I just found the whole thing fascinating. And one more thing that you have mentioned, one more thing I've just read from Jason is
do it.
That a tool, an agent can decide to delegate a task to a different agent if it's struggling. So
now you see, God damn
which
it.
is exactly
Okay.
what we have in, in the human space. Like we're almost codifying like a little human team. It's weird, but it's weird.
You used the term earlier. You said, "Oh," you said it quite casually to my ears. You're like, "Oh yeah," and the lead agent can do this, this, and this. And I was like, "Whoa! Lead agent?
I don't think
Are
that's
we
the
going to
right
have
word. But
staff agents and staff plus agents and senior agents and junior agents and all the rest of agents in the
I'm
same way
not
you have in
sure
the
if
human
that's the
world?"
right terminology, but it's all, from what I've read, it's almost like a composer. You have the first one
Okay,
who
that
basically,
orchestrates and
or another way is that it goes from task to task, and instead of but there still is someone who's kind of overseeing all the tasks.
yeah, right, exactly, yeah.
Because the task can also run in sequential or horizontal, so they can all run at once.
Oh, okay.
Or they can all
Or it
run
could be like
in linear sequential fashion. So there's a whole world of options. It's all crazy. And I said, so one more conclusion is I'm 3 days in and it's exciting me. I'm not scared about it. I think it's weird and it's also intriguing.
Yeah, I can see it, man. It's written all over your face.
Yeah, it's plugged a few gaps in my understanding of AI.
Nice.
And I would just encourage everyone to go have a look, because now when I see some of these tools, we've had a lot of AI tools in the testing space, right? But man. I can now model it in my head. We mentioned this. I'm a big visual thinker. I can now kind of get an understanding of what I think they've tried to do. And Jason himself has built a bunch of AI testing agents.
Has.
I've
only met Jason once. It was at PNSQC back in 2022.
Okay.
And because I think he's another PhD, has been in the trenches with this stuff for
a long time. Yeah.
Before it was cool. You know that phrase, before it was cool? He was doing this shit before it was cool. And so back in 2022, which for me is, when this all started for me.
Yeah.
He was talking about this then. He did a talk at PNSQC, which basically said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could have a little mini Angie Jones that could just run around and test your thing like it was Angie, or test the thing like it was Richard, or this, that, and the other. Yeah. So, I think it, for me anyway, I don't want to speak for everybody. I need to speak for everybody. For me, I feel like I got what he was saying, but I didn't get what he was saying. And as the years have gone by, I've started to understand more about this space. I appreciate your, little field trip into the world of agentic AI and coming back to tell me all about it, and we can share it with everybody else. Folks, what do you think to what Richard has discovered? What do you think to the questions that I was trying to cobble together? What have you learned on these adventures? We would love to know.
What did I butcher? If I butchered something, please tell me that as well. Or if you've got really any useful links, any videos you've liked about the topic. I've been binge watching stuff, so anything that you found really nice about the topic, please share them as well.
Yeah, listen, like I said, that was amazing. I enjoyed that a lot. I'm, in my new 9 to 5, I'm going to have to learn a lot about AI, I think, by the look of it, what I've been able to discover the past few weeks. So that's been really helpful for me. Go check out the show notes. There's going to be a lot of stuff in there from people like Jason, Martin, Melissa, Tariq, our pal, Mr. Winteringham. And then come back and tell us what you have learned on this journey and what you are learning. And are you as excited as Rich? Are you as fascinated as I am and trying to piece together what this means? We would love to hear it, because this is not going away, people. And I just want to plus one what Rich said, which was everything I hear about, maybe I'm biased, but everything I hear about AI, it just makes me think, my job is fucking secure.
Yeah.
I live in opposite land when these things happen. Everyone's like, we're going to get... And I'm like, huh? You mean I've got to be good at asking questions? I've got to be good at framing things. I've got to be able to listen. I've got to talk about... That's where I live. I'm good to go, man. If this thing is going to be everywhere, then that's me. I'm good.
Just to add another minute to the episode, because you've hit a nerve, and I started writing a link. I started writing a LinkedIn post earlier. Now I was, for some reason, my building public approach failed me. All the skills that we don't prioritize as testers, and we don't talk about enough. They are the skills that are shining here: the critical thinking, the modeling, the ability to break down the work you're doing into smaller tasks, so we can communicate it to other people, like as we've been doing so far. All the same things that you have to do here, and at the moment you can't automate it in the traditional way because it's non-deterministic, and it's going to stay non-deterministic. So therefore, all that thinking, all that verbalizing, all that testing story, all that communication is needed. You can't sit down and write a playwright script and check that it says done on the screen.
Tell them
that ain't the future.
That ain't it.
And when people talk about I'm a skilled automated tester, they talk about I know how to use playwright. Those aren't the skills that you actually have. More skills, and those skills are the ones you're going to need in this space. Those skills are, you know how to design a test. You know what oracles are. You know what a good assertion looks like.
I'm telling you.
You can describe it. And no one talks about these things, but they are the only way that I understand at the moment to solve some of the challenges of how are we going to make these non-deterministic agentic systems behave in a scope or a sphere that is good enough.
To get our arms around the problem, we're going to need to be good at these skills.
Absolutely.
And as we've just +1'd each other, these are the things that we are good at in our roles. Especially if you're the kind of person who's going to sit through a podcast like this between two dudes who are just chatting nonsense, who are going to, there's a bunch of testing. If you're listening to those things, if you go into a conference, you're writing blogs, reading blogs, if you're involved in the conversation, if you're doing gnarly stuff in the office and you're like the go-to person when anything weird happens in a team or in your organization, it's like, oh, we need to go and talk to, I don't know, my friend Wanda is that person when she works at places. She quickly becomes the go-to person who seems to know a little bit about everything and can piece things together. You are laughing in the world of AI, man. I cannot agree with you more, Rich. I cannot agree with you more. We are good to go.
Yep.
Just got to realize it.
Absolutely.
And embrace it.
We're going to be using tools for sure, but we're going to have to put a lot more critical thinking in before we can utilize that tool. Especially the evaluation approach to testing LLM's outputs and the reasonings. A lot more critical thinking is going to be needed than simply you can't just read a spec and say the spec says that it should say done on the screen.
Right.
Write an assertion that done's on the screen. Because that's not how these systems work. They're non-deterministic. It's exciting. It's intriguing. This technology is well in its infancy for sure, but it's the opportunities are huge, and I think it's not basically to end on it. It's not as scary as I thought it was. It's really quite intriguing.
I'm going to try and add some resources that I've come across over the past year or two that I've been trying to get my head around this. Some of them you may already be aware of, some of them you won't be. But it's time for Reverend Richards and Bishop Bradshaw to get off of our pulpit. Get off and get out of here. So thank you for sticking with us for this long. This episode's been awesome. Thanks, Rich. And we'll see you next episode.
Bye-bye.
Bye.